Behind the polished walls of the Indiana Fever's headquarters, in a meeting that would never be recorded but would echo across the entire basketball world, something monumental happened. It wasn't televised, it didn't go viral on social media in real time, and no one tweeted the transcript. But the moment Caitlin Clark leaned forward, looked the team's front office in the eye, and spoke her truth, everything changed. It was the kind of conversation that doesn't just reshape a season, it reshapes a league. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation whose arrival had already reshaped WNBA economics, fan engagement, and media coverage, had something to say, something that would ignite whispers, shake foundations, and eventually surface in the form of one name that absolutely nobody saw coming. Larry Bird. Yes, that Larry Bird. The Boston Celtics legend, the Indiana-born son of French Lick, the man whose basketball mind is etched into NBA history, whose competitive fire is the stuff of legend, and whose name has never once been uttered in the context of coaching women's professional basketball. Now, it all started with a revelation, a moment of raw honesty from Clark, not born out of ego, but of necessity. The kind of confession that doesn't get made unless the tension becomes unbearable. The disconnect between the vision she carried from Iowa with a fast-paced, high-octane, crowd-fueled style of play that made her a phenomenon and the structure she'd walked into with the Indiana Fever. That gap had grown wider with each game, each awkward possession, each sideline freeze-out, and each moment when her brilliance was dimmed by systems not built for her. It wasn't just about minutes, touches, or shots. It was about identity. Clark had been a star long before the WNBA. She had a brand, a voice, a presence, and with that came expectations, not just from fans, but from the very fabric of the sport. Her Iowa coach, Lisa Bluder, had understood that. She gave Clark space to grow, the freedom to lead, and the ball to do what she did best. The result? Record-breaking performances, national championships, and a fan base that followed her into the pros. But the transition to the WNBA meant more than just stronger defenders. It meant navigating coaching structures that weren't ready for a player like her. Christy Sides, current head coach of the Indiana Fever, inherited this storm of attention, pressure, and promise. To her credit, she managed a media circus unlike anything the WNBA had seen. She stood firm, made her rotations, delivered calm pressers. But behind those closed doors, the fit never quite worked. The offensive philosophy clashed with Clark's instincts, the play calling felt rigid, and the system looked like it was asking Caitlin Clark, one of the most electrifying players of her generation, to play small, to blend in, to adapt to a slower, more cautious pace that contradicted everything that made her great. So Clark, supported by her team of advisors, sat down with the Fever's top brass and delivered a message, not a demand, not an ultimatum, but a truth. She couldn't thrive in a system built to contain her. And then, somewhere in that room, someone asked the question, what would it look like to build around Caitlin instead? That's when the name surfaced. Not in a proposal, not as a plan, more like a ghost, a legend walking through the hallway of Indiana basketball history. Larry Bird, the man who defined Indiana hoops. A genius of the game who had coached the Indiana Pacers to the NBA Finals, served as an executive, and built teams with vision and grit. A man who had never coached women, never set foot on the WNBA sidelines. And yet, someone whose basketball brain, competitive fire, and historical gravitas could command instant respect. At first, it sounded absurd, outlandish, but then again, everything about Caitlin Clark's arrival had defied convention. Larry Bird represented more than nostalgia. He symbolized excellence, the kind of excellence that transcends systems, gender divides, and traditional coaching pipelines. His basketball IQ, honed through decades of elite-level experience, was unquestioned. And in a league that had suddenly found itself under an international spotlight thanks to one player, the idea of pairing that player with one of the greatest minds in basketball history didn't just make sense, it felt revolutionary. Bird had never coached in the WNBA. He had built championship contending teams. He had dealt with superstars. He had earned the respect of legends. And above all, he understood what it meant to carry the weight of expectation in a state where basketball is religion. That kind of pressure, he lived it. That kind of scrutiny, he thrived under it, and maybe, just maybe, that's what Clark needed. Not another assistant coach turned head coach trying to survive the media storm. Not another system builder focused on X's and O's while ignoring what was happening right in front of them. But a partner, a mentor, a builder, someone who could look at her and see what she was: not just a rookie, not just a shooter, not just the new face of the league, but the future of the sport. Of course, whispers turned into questions. Would Bird even consider it? Could he adapt to the WNBA's nuances, culture, and player dynamics? Would fans embrace the move? Would the league? Would the players? And yet, the arguments in favor kept piling up. The commercial success Clark brought had already broken every imaginable record. Merchandising, through the roof. Ticket sales, historic, national exposure. unprecedented. Suddenly, the Fever had the kind of financial flexibility WNBA teams rarely enjoyed. If there was ever a time to make a high-profile hire, it was now. From a strategic perspective, Clark's development demands innovation. She's not a traditional player. She can't be coached like one. She requires a system that lets her lead, create, improvise. A system that rewards imagination, not just execution. And Bird, throughout his coaching and executive career, has shown a deep understanding of how to empower stars. His philosophies: ball movement, fundamentals, spacing mirror the very things that made Clark special at Iowa. It's not hard to imagine him designing an offense that frees her up, one that makes defenses sweat before she even crosses half court. There's also the symbolic power. Bird coaching Clark would send a message that goes far beyond Indiana, that the old walls between men's and women's sports can be broken, not with slogans, but with actual collaboration. That greatness recognizes greatness. That basketball minds, regardless of background, can elevate the game together. It would be a first stand, it would be a risk. But what about Caitlin Clark hasn't been? Of course, the politics of the WNBA complicate matters. The league has long been built by women, for women. And the idea of bringing in a male legend from the NBA carries layers of complexity. There would be questions. Would it undermine the careers of experienced women coaches waiting for their shot? Would it be seen as pandering, or would it be accepted as a bold experiment aimed at maximizing the league's moment in the spotlight? And then there's the cold reality of coaching contracts, buyouts, league approvals, salary caps, legal intricacies that make every personnel move in professional sports a delicate balancing act. But even here, the Fever may have the upper hand. With increased revenue, unprecedented fan engagement, and national attention, they now operate with a flexibility and leverage few WNBA teams have ever enjoyed. So would Bird say yes? No one knows. He's notoriously private. He's stayed mostly out of the limelight, but insiders say he's watching, that he's intrigued, that the idea of building something new, something transformative, might be the challenge that draws him back into the game. And what about Clark? The one who set this avalanche in motion. Her message wasn't fire the coach, it was believe in me, let me lead, let me play my game, let me breathe. And if you can't do that, then find someone who can. Her voice wasn't angry, it was determined, not rebellious stationary. And in that moment, the Fever had a choice. Stay the course, and risk losing everything, or swing for the fences and change the game forever. The league will watch closely. Fans will speculate endlessly, and the conversation won't end anytime soon, because what happens next in Indiana might set the tone for the entire future of women's professional basketball. So, what do you think? Should Larry Bird take the leap and coach Caitlin Clark? Would this be the bold move the WNBA needs, or a step too far? Does coaching genius transcend traditional gender boundaries, or should the league continue building from within? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're as intrigued by this potential revolution as we are, hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell so you never miss the next chapter. The court is changing and history might just be calling.